1, 2. Oh, that makes that easy. So if you're already seeing me, it's like not supposed to start until like 4 minutes from now. And this is my first time, so forgive me, but we're getting there. That's good. No, I guess it says it's live now, so, but we're going to get into it here. And let's go actually look at the stream here so I know what I'm doing. And look at that. We got some comments. And we got 3 watching now. Guys, this is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but we're getting there. So I'm going to give you just a little quick intro. Now I'm hearing my voice, so I got to mute YouTube. What a trip, man. All right, well, you guys are going to listen to a little music here. I'll get back that scene. I'll be right back with you. Welcome to the Ralph Rant. Here we are, baby. We are live coming from the Salt Lick Studios here tonight. Listen to a little bit of tunes here. I can drag those down a little bit. It's a good old intro song here. It's got some cool guitar on it, though. Welcome in, everyone. Going to get my chat window up here. Oh, and there's my notes. This is like a first time doing this live, man. I've done it with the guitar playing before, but you don't have to open your mouth unless you're sitting there going, jamming away. So welcome in, everybody. Welcome. We've got Tommy here from the famous Mafia Sports Report. He's putting on some great content. Be sure you check out the Mafia Sports Report. This man is an excellent great content creator, and he was the first one to identify my channel, and very happy about that. And we are going to get it going here. That's enough music because we're about to talk about some football. Oh, and I could drag it down here. I'm working with OBS here. I don't have a proper streaming service yet, but my consultant, Mr. Tommy from Mafia Sports Report, has definitely got me hooked up. And now I've just got to get my face off of this monitor so I stop looking at my countenance here. And now I've actually got maybe some microphone. Hey, give me a mic check out there, and if you're seeing everything and hearing everything okay, so we can get it started. And definitely thank you for being here. Mr. William Denmead, thank you. Saw Gabe Davis a couple of weeks ago in Lake Mary. I used to live in Florida, and that's interesting. He is still healing, I understand. I guess it's a meniscus, but he is definitely back with the Bills. And that's one of the subjects I'm going to get into tonight, is talking about these players that have been signed that were previously with the Bills and have come back and have created a stir amongst the frightened of the fan base. There's kind of it's a slightly derogatory term for those folks, but it's endearing, and it is Debbie Downers. That DEBBIE, of course, stands for Drought Enhanced Buffalo Bills Insecurity Effect. And it's a bad thing, but, I mean, with a 17-year playoff drought, what are you going to do? So what am I going to talk about tonight? I saw Hard Knocks actually this morning and not last night. So, and there's a story behind that. And then we got a couple of McDermott items. His presser this afternoon, which it took in. And then also these comments he dealt with earlier in the week from the radio host in Baltimore. And I've got plenty to say about that. Plus some Ravens information, Ravens news from their camp and what's going on, especially with injuries. If you do check John Harbaugh's presser, he says essentially nothing. And you can't even hear the questions. It's a cacophony when the reporters all start talking. Then I'll talk about the game, keys and predictions, and then I've got some warmed up leftover thoughts. So we're going to get into it here. Thank you guys for being here. Go ahead again and subscribe if you have not. I know one of you at least here have, so that's good to hear. But I'm going to start it off talking about this Hard Knocks episode, and it brings to mind a story. And of course, there's nothing like a good story on game week. We are all familiar with the great movie Invincible, and actually, I'm going to get rid of these earbuds so I can hear myself. I'm not listening to myself at all. So no reason to have those. No amplification, just the voice in the nice softened studio here. But we're all familiar with Invincible. Started, I believe it was Mark, now I don't know his name, who started it as the famous Vince Papale. And there's a scene in there, of course, he starts off, and Dick Vermeil is a brand new coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he is having an open tryout because the Eagles are so bad. He's trying to get these players' attention that are on the roster already. So he calls this open tryout, and of course everybody and their brother shows up for this tryout. They probably overdo it in the movie a little bit, maybe not, but a lot of guys are there, and Vince Papale was the only person that showed up at that was invited to training camp. So he gets into training camp, and it's grueling. There's 6 games in the preseason back then. So certainly, thank you, Mark Wahlberg. Thank you so much, Tommy. And the the story goes that he goes through the preseason games. He sees some action at first, less towards the end. Of course, these days, less action in the preseason might mean you're on the roster. But with 6 games, they're looking at guys, and I don't even know what the roster sizes were at that point. They might have been a bit smaller. But as it happens, it gets to the last game, and then he makes it to the last cut, but he's sure he's going to be cut. And then on cut-down day, he finds out he's with the team. Then he calls his friend because his car is always broken down, and his friend, who's the mechanic, shows up to take care of the car and get him started as he always does. So he's standing there by the car, and he's got kind of a look on his face, and his buddy knows he's probably been cut from the team just a while ago. And he's got the hood up of the car, and he comes up and he's looking at the car, and he's going, well, your batteries are okay, your cables are all right. You got a charge here. Distributor cap looks good, no water in it. And he looks at him and he goes, are you sure this car won't start? And Mark Wahlberg looks at him and he goes, like he doesn't know. And the guy looks at him and he goes, are you kidding me? You're not lying to me. You are not kidding me, right? You're a Philadelphia Eagle. And that guy who was trying to fix the car and all his friends are working at the plant and they're going on strike and things are kind of tough for them and it's difficult and there's sadness. But when he hears that from Mark Wahlberg, Vince Papale, he's ecstatic. And Vince in the movie asks him, well, how are things with you and the guys? And his reply was, they're better now. They're better now. And that is actually one of the coolest parts of that movie. Because I've got to say that some stuff, and we all have things going on in our lives, certainly. And I'm no different and do have some things going on recently. Nothing to do with health, thank goodness. When you don't have that, any other problem is nothing if you don't have health problems. So, but not a health problem, but some stuff going on. Didn't sleep much last night. Woke up kind of down, and I realized, oh my God, it was Tuesday night. I did not watch Hard Knocks. And of course, I've been watching it faithfully over and over. So I actually pulled out the iPad, just still lying in the bed at 8 in the morning after maybe having gotten to sleep at 5 a.m. and started watching Hard Knocks. And the Buffalo Bills brought me right out of this. Every part of it, the touching moments at the defensive line dinner where certain guys, Casey Rogers wasn't going to be there anymore, Zion Logue, and a lot of these guys knew it. Casey Rogers goes and gets the football sign, the Bills version with that white 1/4 leather, and it just raised my spirits. And then you get to the scene with Josh, and he's talking with Kyle Brandt, and he's close with Kyle. If you ever caught Kyle Brandt's podcast, I don't know if he's still doing it, but it was from his basement. And he had Josh on, I think, every week for a while and would ask him all sorts of questions. And he asked him this time, so how does it feel to be the MVP of the NFL and be the second most talented person in your home? And Josh got kind of emotional with it. And I don't know how you could help not be, because the feeling around this team is so strong, and the feeling around the city. And we'll talk more about this later with these comments from Baltimore to McDermott and so forth, and some other thoughts I have about the area. But it just brought my spirits up so much, and I realized that, well, whatever's going on, this is week one. There's a game Sunday night, and there's a game Thursday night, and a game Friday night. And we are fully in it, and it is here. So let's celebrate. Week one is arriving. Let's celebrate being here on YouTube with all these good friends that are showing up here in the feed. And I'm just seeing the chat. I don't even see the numbers. It's great if you show up. I hope you do. And of course, this will be out as a regular video, of course, also. And so let's be happy that we have the Bills. And at the beginning of this season, let's drink to them. Cranberry juice. When stuff gets rough, I got a seltzer for later. But this is just cranberry juice. And the toast is, where would you rather be than right here and right now? Let's go. It's a beautiful thing. The Bills are at it. We are on. There will be football every weekend from now until February. And the things I'm going to talk about today are still leading to my prediction that the Bills will win the Super Bowl. And of course, if you were checking it out on CBSSports.com, Pete Prisco, who is the writer there that puts together predictions, and he also does the power rankings. And his first power rankings came out where he had the Bills number 2 to start, but he's saying they're going to be number 1 at the end. So that's a beautiful thing, and we'll see what his predictions are for this week, because this is definitely a big game. And Mr. Denby coming up for the rivalries game. All right. Are you getting a jersey? Those jerseys are beautiful. That's kind of why I wore the white tonight. You talk about home whites, how beautifully clean that is. And then certainly, who else we have here? We've got Alexander Wrights. Nice. Thank you so much for being here. Any questions you got, guys, go ahead and engage. If you have not liked the podcast or even perhaps gone the distance to hit subscribe, I'd very much appreciate it. I think we're about 759 or 760 right now. I've had kind of a goal, maybe unrealistic, but I don't know. I'm predicting the Bills to go undefeated, so why not? But yes, absolutely hit subscribe on that. If we could try to get to 1,000 before kickoff, probably won't happen, but I'm going to have fun trying. And yes, what jersey are you going to get? That's the. They've only got a couple out so far, right? I think they've got Josh, and I don't know who else. But yeah, and the last home opener, definitely Tommy from Mafia Sports Report. And yeah, I've always refused to call it Highmark. And of course, Rich Stadium at first. And though I did not get to the preseason games, I did attend the very first regular season game at the Ralph. That was the Bills hosting the New York Jets. And it was not the season opener. I believe it was obviously the Bills' home opener. Yes, get Josh. Good call. It was the home opener. I believe it might have been September 30th. I don't know. I think the season started a little later, so it might have been game 2. The Bills beat the Jets 9-7 in that game. It was 9-0 with 3 field goals from John Leipold. There's a name from the past. And the Jets only scored a touchdown right at the very end of the game. And I believe Joe Namath got his butt kicked pretty well that time around. So yes, the Ralph is going away, and but the new building is amazing. I do not live in the Buffalo area. I grew up there, but I was in town seeing my mom a few weeks ago over the 4th of July, and managed to go out by the stadium. And it was really impressive getting there. Of course, the construction is not to the point it is now with the cladding and so forth, but it was huge. It was beautiful. And I watch Bill Stadium Live, presented by the Gorilla Garage, which is right down Abbott Road. He's a famous tailgate spot, and he's got a camera up on the stadium. That's Buffalo Stadium Live, or Bills Stadium Live, I believe it is. Check that out on YouTube. These days, most of the exterior cladding is on the opposite side of where that camera is. And it was cool to see it. But we were riding down the 219 after we were coming from the north. We were riding down the 219, got off the I-90, and onto 219 heading south towards the stadium. And, of course, the 219 runs just east. And we come over this hill, and there it is. It was like the freaking Death Star. It was so huge. It's like a cruise ship. I used to live in South Florida. Speaking of Lake Mary, I was in South Florida, and we would go by the port of Miami, and it was funny. You'd go right by the cruise ships, and they were big. But when you were about a mile away, they looked larger, and the stadium looked so awesome. But at any rate, I'm babbling here. Let's get into the notes. Of course, we talked about the Hard Knocks finale, and the real theme of togetherness and just the support, camaraderie, and respect, and the guys just love it in Buffalo. What was Jordan Phillips was talking about the fact that in other clubs it's like business-like, that you're coming to work, I don't feel good, and then these guys would just that have had training camp experiences at other clubs, like Casey Rogers, for example, indicating on Hard Knocks, he'd get up in the morning very excited to come out. And so from South Florida, I lived in Cooper City. And I lived in Florida as a Bills fan for 17 years, and in Cooper City. And indeed, we went to the stadium, formerly known as Joe Robbie, usually with a bunch of people every season for the games. And I remember, I think it was the very first one we went to was the game in 1989. I believe it was the season opener. Bills were down. Kelly drives the team. There's a fourth down from about the 4. There's a couple seconds left on the clock, and Kelly dives over the goal line. We were probably on about the 30-yard line, so that the Bills were going basically right to left, and we were there for that game and saw many of them down there. But and now and Rochester, all right. But yeah, I'm actually in Southeast Michigan, and I have to tell you, being in another NFL area, you just don't see the fans wearing Lions gear everywhere, and it's so funny when we're in Western New York and you're walking around and seeing people, there's a Bills jersey. You want to go Bills. And it's like, wait a minute, we're here. Everybody knows. But it's still remarkable how many people in Buffalo and what the whole area is like. And Hurricanes fan. Yes, I was at the old Orange Bowl. I used to play in a band with a guy who was a videographer, and he had this gig of videotaping the halftime show at the Orange Bowl. And I was there the night that Nebraska beat the U. Other times when Miami won, I remember being a few feet on the sideline away from Bernie Kosar and from Warren Sapp. Amazing stuff. And good for the Hurricanes the other night. Huge win over Notre Dame. I watched that in its entirety. Very exciting, and that looks like they're going to be a good club, and it looks like Notre Dame will be good also. That was a hell of a comeback and easily the best college game of the weekend, unless you're happen to not be a fan of Alabama, who got their butts kicked up one side of the field and down the other by FSU. So, but the college game is off and running, and and everybody's talking about the games they're going to get to. Alexander writes, you're coming over from Washington to watch Week 3. That is supreme. I am not getting to a game early. I don't believe. I will be at the Cincinnati game, and I have to talk with a couple other content creators, maybe one that's here, about us perhaps getting together with some sort of pregame, because that will be a 4:25 kick, and there will be plenty of time in the afternoon to do some fun stuff prior to that game. And then I am going to attempt to get to the very last game of the season, once again the Jets, and bookend the time that the Bills have spent there. And then hopefully maybe get to a game at the new stadium. And, of course, if no one knows my secret desire, it's, of course, to be a great Bills podcaster. But my true dream is to become the radio voice of the Buffalo Bills, because we haven't had anybody like Van Miller in that spot since I think he retired in 2003, and I think we lost him in 2016, I believe. Murph was great, but Murph was the analyst with Van for years, and when Murph moved into that spot, he was great, but he's loud and he made the mic crackle a little bit. Then quite unfortunately, Murph had the health issue a couple of years ago, and now Chris Brown is in that spot. But I think we need another voice similar to Van Miller. And we'll see. If my podcast ends up going anywhere and I get noticed by the Bills, I'm applying. You can bet on that. So, and you have major concerns about the defense. Huh? I'm going to look at some of these other comments, but we're going to talk about that. And I've got to get good at looking at the comments here. Again, I'm doing my very, very first podcast, and I'm glad it's not flooded with them because I would be missing so many. But absolutely, and we will get to that defense. But let's talk about the McDermott presser here today a little bit. And he gave some injury updates, and let's just run through them very quick. And it's interesting that as little information as McDermott gave us on the injuries, Harbaugh gave us even less. He was so unwilling to divulge anything. And you got to know he's worried and wondering about the Bills, and I'm going to get to that reason here. But let's go through them. Trey White did not practice today, on Wednesday, but he is not ruled out. Christian Benford was limited. Tyler Bass also limited, I guess, dealing with still the same pelvic soreness or whatever that was. I saw actually that it might have been Big O, the Jerry Ostrowski, that made a wonderful point about people worried about Bass's kicks sailing a little bit. And I had never thought about this. If you're hitting that ball with a little less force, the spin on the ball actually can tend to have the ball either draw or cut, just like a golf shot. And you could see that definitely Bass is definitely got a cut. He's hitting a fade every time. And the Big O made the point that if he was kicking that ball stronger, that fade is not going to come into play as much. So he had a couple sail. We'll see how he's doing. But McDermott did report during the press conference that they did look at kickers this week and they did not sign anyone. But continuing on the presser, excuse me, he mentioned Curtis Samuel, who is better now. He was out of practice, I guess, with a brief personal situation that was a positive one. He did not indicate what it was. It's apparently going to be reported. If you go and ask Curtis, I would expect somebody would be doing that. But he sounds like he's okay. And Khalil Shakir, likewise, like Trey White, not Trey White, but rather some of the others, he's limited, but is not ruled out of the game. There was good notes on Cole Bishop. And again, you could see the change in Cole Bishop right from the start, those first few snaps at Tampa. But I have to imagine, and again, this is something I always believe, is the fact that certainly a great player coming onto a team will make other players around them better. But I believe it works the other way too, where a newer, highly talented player that's trying to learn, trying to get his confidence, will be made much better by going out amongst the great players around him. And in this case, specifically Taylor Rapp. There is probably no other pair of players on the defense that have to work together and more in concert than those two. And I'm sure this couple of weeks of practice have been a great help. I'm not really worried about the safety room as long as we keep away from injury, because there are some tough safeties in the league. There is no bigger nasty prick at that position than Taylor Rapp. Rapp is nasty. Rapp is vicious. Rapp wants to hurt you. And hopefully we can avoid some of the friendly fire issues that we've seen. But that was the other item. And then we'll get into the last McDermott press conference item I have, because it was relatively short. Not talking a lot about the opponent, because you don't have a lot of situation where you're going to be able to know what they're doing, no film and so forth. But it's the business of this Baltimore radio host who has probably cleared out the Baltimore supply of Preparation H, getting over his butt hurt over the Bills defeating the Ravens in the divisional round last season. And had the temerity to go out and suggest that not the team, not the coaching staff, but Buffalo itself is a city of losers. And of course, you know that guys on the team, McDermott especially, they're not watching stuff a lot. But in this day and age, it's difficult not to see certain things. And McDermott was pissed, and he actually said so. And I did not actually hear that cut, but I know some people from Baltimore. I worked with a guy who's actually a huge Baltimore fan. He is a relative of John Harbaugh, and so he gets in some good seats, and he's indicating, just kind of an attitude and so forth. And of course, you find it on the Locked On Ravens podcast also. We all know Joe Marino is the king of Locked On. He is the clinical example of what a great Locked On podcast is. I believe that has to be true. And certainly there are other, for example, Mike Debate, who is the Patriots, Locked On Patriots guy. I don't know if he's doing it this year. I actually like the Jets guy. I don't know his name. And of course, Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. Kyle is a astute student of the game, a watcher of young talent. He's very much into the draft world. And you could sit and listen to him also, being as big a Dolphin as he is. But then you got this little snot-nosed kid that is doing the Locked On Ravens pod. I had the unfortunate experience of catching, I believe it was last season, prior to the Bills' loss, the big loss, 35-10, I believe, to the Ravens, where Joe Marino's doing this crossover with this guy, and he's got this little shelf behind him with the camera really close up on his face, no really background, and just wise remark after wise remark. And then I had to see him subbing for Steve Peacock on the Peacock and Williamson Locked On show for a couple of days. And it's the same attitude from him in this business about the Bills being a city of losers, sort of this attitude they have. And Buffalo is unique. And there are obviously a few good reasons for it. There's empirical reasons why Buffalo is unique. There are no, aside from the Sabres, who are somewhat irrelevant and trying, but it's also the National Hockey League, which if you're talking about the Big Three or Big Four, it's number 3 or number 4, as it were. So that would be one item. And the town is smaller, but there is something about the Bills that really attracts people. It's a unifying cultural center. Like I mentioned earlier, you can go to Buffalo. There's Bills gear everywhere. And there's a personal connection. I told the story on a podcast a while back, being at a county fair here a couple of months ago in the summer, and seeing a guy with his daughter in a Josh Allen jersey. We had to come up and say, "Go Bills," and we got to talking. Huge Bills fan, doesn't live in the area, and then he shows me his sneakers, and he's got Bills logos on his sneakers. I mean, it's amazing, and the love for the team. And, it is a unique place. And I'll tell you one thing, like restaurants. Now, I live around here in Southeast Michigan, and of course there are good restaurants and so forth, but back in Western New York, you've got restaurants that have been there for decades. It's just, I'm not going to spend the podcast talking about it. It's just different. Buffalo is wonderful. I would love actually to be back there. And again, Marv meant more than just the team when he said, "Where would you rather be than right here, right now?" So at any rate, we can move on a little bit here. And I did take a look at John Harbaugh's press conference today, like I said, which was extremely vague. There was not a lot of details. He was not coming up with a lot of information on injuries. And he wasn't doing it like McDermott, where Sean's going to give you X amount of information, and you know that's all he's giving you, and he's not putting any spin on how he feels about it. But you could tell that Harbaugh is like he's worried. It's like, well, I'm not going to mention that. Well, no, we're not going to mention that. No, we're not giving that away. I think the only thing we actually really know is that Lamar Jackson will play. He's questionable with a foot, but he's expected to play. And then we know tight end Isaiah Likely, and of course you likely remember him from the season opener where he, against the Chiefs, I believe this is a year ago, where he caught a pass in the end zone and had about a half an inch of his toe on the white line, and the Ravens lost. But he will not be playing. And then Patrick Ricard, I understand, is also having some sort of problem. He was listed questionable as of September 1st. I don't think he was on today's injury report, but it's something to be noted. So, but let's get into a few other things and move on to this game. And I really want to jump into the comment from our friends at Mafia Sports Report here about major concerns with the defense. And it's understandable. If you were privy to the Chicago game, you had a secondary that looked as confused as could be. Yeah, I'm a homer. I mean, I'm wearing this hat and sweating. I'm a homer. But I believe that Sean McDermott has become an excellent head coach, and I think he's gone past the bounds of what you can expect from defensive head coaches. And in this particular case, I believe he had conversations with Ben Johnson. He even mentioned running into him jogging. That's not something you would really mention. And of course, Ben Johnson is interested in getting these Chicago Bears jump-started and going. I have a feeling McDermott said, look, I'm going to put a bunch of kids out in the secondary. They think they know what they need to do. They don't. I want you to, go ahead and, run your stuff. I want some film. I want to torch them. And I think that's exactly what McDermott did. And then he worked on them. And then, of course, the following week, down against the Bucs, it looked like a different team, of course. But the defense, of course, has been a question. And perhaps even by process of elimination, with all the continuity on the offensive line returning the 5 starters, you've got the same running back room, you've got the same quarterback room. The receiver room is the same, except there's some great additions to it, notable additions. So you kind of have to feel comfortable there, and also comfortable from the standpoint that Josh Allen, it seems quite different this camp and has looked great from what we could see, and it continues to mature and improve. So by the process of elimination, you're not too worried about the offense. But about the defense, yeah, you can worry about the secondary. We can worry about corners. We've got both of our planned starting corners right now either limited or not practicing, and the game is 4 days away. Actually, 4 days away, 96 hours. In fact, 96 hours and 44 minutes, to be precise. And I get that. But there's one thing about the defense that is a huge positive that I believe. And I believe it's Ryan Nielsen. I did a podcast about Ryan Nielsen coming to the Bills back in February. Again, he was hired before the news stories about the loss to the Chiefs even had the ink dried yet. This was a full 6 or 7 days before the Super Bowl. It got lost in the shuffle of news reporting. It probably got reported by some of the local outlets, but in the midst of the Super Bowl break, with of course the talk of the possibility of Chiefs three-peating and Can the Eagles do it and so forth and so on? It got lost in the shuffle. But Ryan Nielsen has come aboard on the Bills. And to reiterate, I made that one of the biggest things that's happened with the Bills in years. And it wasn't just about Ryan Nielsen. It's about the entire thing that's happened with the defense, because I believe Brandon Beane had a meltdown after that latest loss to the Chiefs in the playoffs. You've heard him say at press conferences, it's obvious what your deficiencies are. Your weaknesses are put most on display in the final game of the season, especially in a playoff elimination situation. And of course, the point being that, and you could talk about the Bills secondary all you want, but rush and secondary have to work together. And without a pass rush that was effective, in fact, for all the complaining about Jordan Phillips coming back to the Bills, he's the only one that got a sack in that ball game. So, having said that, Beane has a meltdown. He's going to bring in Ryan Nielsen. Ryan Nielsen is a defensive line psycho. In fact, if you look at certain pictures of him, he looks like Tom Selleck as a football coach. But he's a psycho. And he has developed a new approach with this defensive line. And not only that, that approach translated also into acquiring Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, and of course, Joey Bosa. And that was just in the free agency period. And then, of course, we get to the draft. And I know Jeremy White is still butthurt that a receiver wasn't selected until the 7th round. And probably a bit that Max Hairston, who is small and perhaps is seemingly frail to him now, was the Bills' first pick. They need Hairston. They drafted Hairston to defend Xavier Worthy. We're getting specific now on what has to happen. We need Hairston later in the season. But they also drafted T.J. Sanders, Deion Walker, and Landon Jackson. And I'm sorry I got the last two out of order because Deion Walker could have been the first, because it was an absolute must to get game wreckers on this defense. The Chiefs have their game wrecker. Just really one, Chris Jones. Other guys, do well. Nick Bolton looks great because Chris Jones is on the field, amongst others. But the fact is that the Bills do not have a game wrecker. And a game wrecker is usually someone in the middle. Yes. Groot is a great defensive end, and he will do excellent this year. But the reason he will is because the Bills will have more inside pressure. But this is why I'm not concerned about the defense. Because you may recall when certain podcasts were talking about the defensive rotations that were being seen, the defensive line rotations in the preseason, and it was being expressed as pairs. These two tackles for these two tackles, these two ends coming in for these two ends. And of course, it would appear like that. And when you're platooning a defense, you're often going to see that. And you'll see that from the Bills also. But I believe that Ryan Nielsen is more like Aaron Cromer is with the offensive line, where he has this unit working all together because there are different packages installed, ready for Sunday night, that we have not seen. We saw maybe a couple of 5-man pressures, but that was kind of it during the preseason. The Ravens don't have the first fucking idea what is waiting for them Sunday night. And I guarantee you this, because you are going to see the Buffalo Bills defensive line, and I'm talking about both tackles and both ends, doing all manner of games and stunts. You'll have twists. You'll have odd fronts, or basically mugged A-gaps, for example. You will show pressure with the linebacker, but then and then not send him and have him come back into coverage. And on the next play, that linebacker will do the same thing. And he is coming, and you'll have T.J. Sanders go back into coverage. It is unpredictable, but it is also fierce. Deion Walker is the Bills' game wrecker in my estimation. The man was throwing centers around. And yes, of course, he's learning and getting better at stopping the run, establishing his anchor to begin with. Obviously, he's being exposed to new players, a new level of players. But this guy is just getting started. And I have a feeling that what we are going to see Sunday night is interior pressure, and we're going to see Deion Walker take Tyler Linderbaum and put him on his fanny a few times. The Ravens aren't expecting it. They have no idea. They can probably guess. They might worry. But if they get pressure up the middle on Lamar Jackson and are breaking up some runs or disrupting some run starts right in the backfield with Derrick Henry or the other back that they have, it could be trouble. And I think that is if you look at the two teams and do a list of the differences, that difference with the Bills, to me, stands out more than any other. With what this defensive line is going to be capable of and what Ryan Nielsen is planning on unleashing on the Ravens. And I can't wait to see. And it will be worth the entire price of admission to get the All-22 after that game to see what kind of things they pulled off. Obviously, I'm going to predict a win here for the Bills later on, but I think that will be the X factor. Now, I'm hearing what you're saying here, Tommy, with the McDermott's defensive scheme that doesn't change, and that's his concern. I believe it's not his defensive scheme any longer. I think he has relinquished that. He's become a true head coach and understanding what a head coach needs to be. And I believe that Ryan Nielsen was brought in to really be the consultant on this defensive line. Now, Bobby Babich, of course, is the defensive coordinator, but we know he's more of a linebackers and secondary guy. We know he's a Sean McDermott pupil and has been for years and years. And I think that's the reason that Nielsen was brought in, because Nielsen has expertise and a track record, and now he's got some tools on the defensive line, which I think are going to surprise a lot of people. We're going to find out about it Sunday night. Well, and as far as the coaching to win and not to lose, that's obviously a holdover from 13 seconds. And those hurt, and certainly the issues with the game last January 26th, the AFC title game versus the Chiefs. And, of course, you can talk all you want about the fact that there were bad calls, bad spots of the football, 2 consecutive plays. First with Kincaid, seemingly had the first down. His knees didn't touch on that third down. And then on the fourth down, looks like Josh has it. The linesman running from the opposite side of the field is here, and then the other one is over here. He gets overruled, and then you get this big attack on the NFL that it's rigged and they're paid off and so forth. No. Never attribute to treachery that which can be explained by incompetence. This is never a truer thing was uttered, and this all is just simply about the fact that the Bills could not get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, or they could not get pressure on other quarterbacks in other situations. I believe that is going to be different this year, and certainly teams will get film on this situation after Sunday night, but the Ravens don't have any film. And that's where I believe this is going to make a huge difference when we get in and talk about this game next week and the result of it and so forth. But certainly, we're going to talk about, and here's a great comment right here, again, from Tommy at the Mafia Sports Report, trusting the players more. And it's also about trusting the young players more. And I think we might see that a little bit. So one thing I've noticed about the Bills that they seem to, it's almost they're afraid to put out youngsters on the field for fear that they don't have their act together yet. But I think in the last few years, McDermott has learned that the only way for them to learn how to get their act together is to be out in the field. You need those minutes. You need minutes and enable you to learn this game and get that experience. You can't learn it from film. You can't learn it from sitting in a classroom. You can't learn it from walkthroughs or even half-speed installs. And it's difficult to learn it in practice also because you're practicing against the same guys all the time. What they need is to get guys out on the field. That's going to happen. And fortunately, the Bills' schedule is certainly it's a big one to start. I'm glad it's not a cupcake. I'm glad it is the Ravens because we can get a real feel. And rather than going out and maybe thinking it's a cupcake, and then we know the Bills in the last 3 out of 4 seasons have struggled with seemingly lesser opponents, especially in the early parts of the opener. And then, of course, there's more concern by Bills Mafia with the fact that the Bills having struggled offensively even and early in those contests, and that was when Josh Allen had some snaps in the preseason. Now he has not. So we'll have to see how that actually works out. But and again with that the comment there with the closing out the games having been an issue, it's the conservative thing certainly because I think you always relied on your all-pro too high situation with Poyer and Hyde, but I think it's also a matter of him just getting the confidence to go out and actually not worry about it and not have it end up being so close. And I think the other thing that's affected the Bills with that, of course, are the number of games that the Bills win going away. When you've got Josh Allen on the sideline for some or the majority of the fourth quarter of the game because the Bills are so far ahead. And we may well expect that again this season. But I do have a feeling that this defense is going to be really good this year. I think there's some learning that's going to happen. And, of course, after the Ravens game, we will be dealing with, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, but we've got division games with the Jets and the Patriots. I think we've got the Saints coming in. And, of course, game just before the bye is down in Atlanta. Atlanta is actually looking pretty good. That might be a contest. But I think there are some winnable games and some good opportunities to get guys out on the field. But then you take that no film point I made a little bit ago, and there's a part B to that because the Bills will not have Ogunjobi and Hoyt. And while Ogunjobi showed pretty well, I mean, I didn't see much more out of him in the preseason than frankly, Dwayne Carter, who unfortunately is out for the year with a ruptured Achilles. But Michael Hoyt is nuts. And this guy is just possessed on the field. There will be no film, and not only no film on Michael Hoyt, but no film on how Michael Hoyt will be used in this defensive line scheme by Ryan Nielsen. So I think you're going to have not only the Ravens game be a situation of discovery for the opponent with this defense. But then you will also have the first game back, which will be, I believe, the Panthers down at their place in Week 8 after the Week 7 bye. And Hoyt will have a chance to play in that game and be well prepared because the Bills, of course, have the bye prior to that, and he'll have a chance to actually have a couple of weeks of practice before getting out there. And then the next week is the Chiefs. And we'll see how the Chiefs go. I know half the fans are worried that God, don't beat the Chiefs in the regular season. It's an automatic we'll lose in the playoffs. And people are saying that the Chiefs are actually have improved their offensive line and they will be quite good this year and don't count them out at all and so forth. Guys, that loss to the Eagles in the Super Bowl left a mark. It left a mark on the Chiefs. And I am certain that there are going to be after effects of that mark when we get into the season. And we'll especially find out tomorrow night. I believe the game's down in Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, and Chiefs and Chargers. The Chargers look stronger. Unfortunately, they lost their left tackle Slater to an ACL earlier in camp. That's difficult for them. Yeah, at least they've had some time to get another guy up to speed there. So we'll be looking forward to that. And isn't it true, really, this just comes up when you're thinking about the season getting going. I used to rationalize way in the past when it came to be the playoffs during the drought that I could really enjoy the playoffs now because I'm not emotionally attached to what's going on in these games. I can watch it with the enjoyment of entertaining football, but not get wrapped up too heavily in who wins or who loses. You might have some favorites, but there's no loss that's going to send you into the depths of depression for upwards of 2-3 months. So that was a rationalization, and I could enjoy the playoffs from that standpoint. But now it's different, and the Bills, of course, are perennial contenders, of course, are favored to win their division, let alone the Super Bowl, by many houses and many outlets. But what makes it interesting now is we start looking at playoff effects and seeding effects right from game one, obviously from this head-to-head matchup. But then, of course, you've got an AFC West matchup Friday night, which if the Chargers can win that and offset the balance of power, that could set something stirring because we have to look at things right from the start of the season and projecting where the Bills can get. And, of course, it's a long season. You can obviously lose a couple of games and get right back to it. No question about that. But I think that looking at how the rest of the league is going becomes intensely more interesting when we're seeing how it affects the Bills as we go through. Yeah, Brady was pretty awesome, and I'm hearing tell that the folks think I saw a prediction that he would be the head coach of the Bills if McDermott does not get the team to the Super Bowl. I seriously doubt that, and I also saw another comment. I don't know if it was. I don't think it was my Stadium podcast, but there was one mentioning where I believe he was saying that McDermott and Bean don't work for the fans. They work for Terry Pagula. And to expect anything to be done for the fans would be ridiculous. Guys, I don't know. You've watched the draft room. You've seen Hard Knocks. Again, the draft war room, Hard Knocks, just different cuts from the Bills and so forth. Even Terry Pagula's speech at the topping off ceremony of the new stadium. And I'm here to tell you that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane do not work for Terry Pagula. It is precisely and exactly, as far as the Bills go, the other way around. Terry Pagula works for Sean McDermott. And if that is not obvious to you, then you're just, of course, you're wrapped up. And of course, this is the beginning of the season. There's the worry again, and of course, one of those worries has been the fact of all the players the Bills are signing. And I'm moving all over my agenda here because I'm just not the best live podcaster yet, but I'm having a blast. And thank you again, guys, for so much for being here. And I haven't even gone through the list here. The Fume drummer is here. Hey, I'm a musician too, man. We got to get together. I'd like to hear what your stuff does. Sounds like. Why does the NFL bother playing games in other countries and other continents? It's stupid. Oh, thank you. Now, I'll preface this by saying, look, I was raised Catholic. I have a really strong faith. I don't really like the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is very similar to Disney because we don't know which has more money than the other. But a close third has got to be the National Football League. And thank you for saying that, because I've got a couple of rants to get into about that. And of course, having to do with this business of the overseas games, which is, it's insane. Yes, it's a great product. Of course it is. Professional football is the greatest sport on the planet. If for no other reason, at the level that it's played at, and the fact that there are 22 men on the field on any given play, unless somebody screws up. 22 of all these different positions. Let's get a mathematician to go through and create the myriad possibilities that are existing on every single play in the NFL. And of course, that's why we have EPA. It's able to work. There's so many possibilities that you can average all of those and get the expected points added, which is one of the best stats in the league you can use. So there's no question that the game is great, but the notion of sending these games over there is just so ridiculous, because it gives disadvantages to teams who are giving away a home game. And it's not like basketball where you've got like 44 home games, or baseball, 81 or whatever it might be. You've only got 9, if you're lucky, and 8 with this 17-game season. And then now you have to do, the commercials. I'm going to get into that. The fact that the NFL is having to put these games over there and put these teams through this, and taking away home games and taking away games from fan bases, is ridiculous. And the idea that you're actually going to place a team over there, it's going to make every other team in the league like the Harlem Globetrotters when, the Berlin butt kickers show up in the United States for maybe a 2-game road sweep and get their asses kicked. Just like the Globetrotters used to beat teams. And the other issue with it in increasing those number of games, and because it's going to go to 18 here at some point, with the only good part about that being there will be 2 bye weeks per team rather than 1. But that's the fact of, there are not enough good quarterbacks in this league. And maybe the plan is to start a worldwide farm league for the NFL. If that was their idea in getting the NFL popular overseas, I could perhaps see that. But you need some kind of developmental league. And it's tough to do in college football because there's so much money in college football and so much concern with actually winning the college game itself that it's not as much focused on getting players developed. And that's a real problem. But yeah, I definitely have a problem with the overseas games. And again, if you want to talk about McDermott gaffes, the banking sleep notion of going over to London. Listen, I flew to London when I was a kid because I was a musician, and there was this America's Youth in Concert thing, and we played at Carnegie Hall, and then went and played at Royal Albert Hall in London, and got on a 747 to go over there, and jet lag is just a different freaking animal. And to expect those guys to have been able to play well, that has to be his biggest mistake, and really since 13 seconds, because it got Matt Milano hurt. That's for certain, and it got the Bills a loss against actually a pretty bad Jaguars team. And the Toronto series, yes, Fume Drummer, the Rogers Center. You remember the game they played against the Falcons there? That was one of the greatest games played, and if the Bills had a real home crowd, they might have won it. Terrible also. Pardon me, but that was Ralph Wilson, trying to get the team going in sort of the midst of the drought with the certain ideas he had. And all wrong. I'm sure he's happy to see what we have going on today. Yes, the Toronto series was a disaster. And can you believe it actually lasted 5 years? And they were so forgettable. I don't even remember the years. I don't know if I could guess one of them. Maybe, I don't know, 2013 maybe? Was that one of the years? Maybe close to the last year. I have no idea. And then as far as the commercials go, and I see the comment here that look what ESPN has done to the NFL Red Zone, adding the commercials, which I don't really get the Red Zone, and I won't suffer from that. But it's prominent, and you also see it. I'm seeing it in college football now because I watch a lot of the games and will fast forward through them. YouTube TV, if you're using that, and that's where the NFL ticket is now, you can just hit your cursor button and go ahead in 15 seconds and just blast from play to play to play. Able to do that with the NFL too and take in a bunch of games, except I'd never do that with the Bills, always live. But I saw in the college games this weekend, you had 3.5-minute commercial breaks. This used to be 2 minutes because they're just selling more and more because they need more and more money because you've got the transfer portal and the NIL system in the NCAA. And then in the NFL, obviously, you've got the situation with the salary cap coming up, the big deal that was made with ESPN. You know, the good side is you're going to have higher salary caps, but it's just making it more and more commercialized and making us wait for it. I'm waiting for the day when they go to like what golf does and have this playing through horse shit where you're looking at the ball game on one side of the screen and, you know, some commercial about, I don't know, whatever. I won't mention anything on the other side. Yeah, the NFL is king, absolutely. And and of course it's going farther now. And at least I will say I'm pleased because I'm trying to look at the good side of certain things, that this Friday night game is not like this Peacock crap or something like that where people might not be subscribed and have to go and subscribe. At least it's on YouTube and everybody can go and watch it because that's how it should be with all the games. To have to pay for other games in addition to paying for the NFL Sunday ticket is ridiculous. And I've been a Sunday ticket holder now. This is going to be 28 years. And I had it down in Florida for years. But let's see what else we've got in the comments here. There was another great one here. Yeah, the red zone thing, I got to that. That was ridiculous. And you know, Roger Goodell, I mean, I guess he's got his mandate from the owners, but you still have to think about the players, and they're going to need to somehow build in more rest for the players during the season, which brings up another point which the Bills were kind of forced into over the last couple of years, suffering defensive injuries early on, like with Matt Milano and Dorian Williams had to come in. And there was all this worry that Dorian, yeah, he's a good run stopper, he triggers fast, but he doesn't understand the coverages. Well, those guys got better because they got minutes. And I think what this does is it gives the longer schedule, especially an 18-game schedule, will at least give teams more time early on. It's not preseason, but it's almost better than preseason because the teams are able to get guys some minutes, maybe afford to be able to lose a game, but you're actually getting people experience and things are improving on the teams. So that might be a positive to the 18-game season, but what you're doing to these players in terms of especially this overseas travel is ridiculous. And of course it builds in a bye for them, but I'm telling you, it's still tough. Anybody who's flown overseas and back, it's difficult, and especially for the players. There's pressure differential on the aircraft. It does all sorts of things to injuries. Guys have to get treatment or get some kind of therapy or wraps or whatever even before they can get on an aircraft to take a 6, 7, 8 hour flight, upwards of that. But let's get into my game predictions and keys here and try to stick on plan a little bit here. How are we doing? Oh, we blasted through an hour already. It doesn't even seem like that, but now I always do my videos, sitting doing takes in front of the camera and trying to get them right. And no, you screwed up. Go back and do it again, and might get 15 minutes of tape for like a 6-minute segment. No such luck here, but it's actually better. So all of the mistakes I'm making and all the lip smacks and all these other things that I've started noticing even on other podcasts when I started seeing these myself, well, it is what it is. It's live. I'll tell you one thing, I'm not going to have to spend 8 hours doing editing and uploading a 4K video and processing 4K here just to get to the point where I have a video up on YouTube. But I believe, first of all, I'll get into my prediction. The Bills will win this game. I'm not going to give you an exact scoreline, but I believe the biggest key will be Ryan Nielsen's new defensive line and what that is going to impose upon the Ravens, who haven't seen this. Because you're going to have, basically, Deion Walker is not a one-tech. People talk about a one-tech, and one-tech means actually what you're doing, which is basically almost a two-gap situation where you're a tree stump or a fire hydrant. Playing in the position of a one-gap or a one-tech does not make you a one-tech. Deion Walker is decidedly a three-tech. He's a penetrating, attacking style defensive lineman. If you happen to line him up over the center, okay, you want to call him a one-tech, fine. But the fact is, this is a penetrating defensive line. And the penetration in the middle is going to be the biggest key, I think, in this game. I think the defensive looks, I think that's going to be a real thing that no one has seen on tape yet with the Bills. Certainly teams will go and study what Ryan Nielsen has done at other clubs. He had great success with these methods with the Saints, and then he went on to the Jaguars and Falcons, I believe, if it was in that order. Didn't have quite as much luck, but saw improvements. But I think he's got a toolkit now in this Bills defensive line room, I'm talking the tackles and the edges, that he's not had before. So I believe we're going to see some really interesting stuff from the defensive line. There'll be a lot of pressure packages, the alignments and the disguises. I think it's going to be pretty crazy, and I think they are going to confuse Lamar Jackson. And with confusion becomes looking around. And one of these times, one of these guys is going to get, and I mean really get wood on Lamar Jackson on one of these runs. We'll see what happens, and it might be this opener here. And as I said earlier, the Ravens are preparing, and by John Harbaugh's own admission, by looking at last year's divisional playoff game and basically saying, well, that was our last game, that was their last game. And then he said, well, not their last game, but the last game we care about, unquote. But he doesn't know what he's looking at with this defense. And, of course, you also have the situation of the excitement to see the unveiling of this with Bills Mafia, because if Bills Mafia starts seeing these guys pinning their ears back and getting a couple of stops on Derrick Henry and preventing that long scamper like he seems to get against us many games, and then getting wood on Lamar Jackson a couple of times and a couple of sacks, maybe a couple of turnovers, that place is going to be upside down. It's going to be nuts. So I believe that is going to be the key to the game, and I'm very excited to see what that defense is going to look like and what the energy of this team is going to look like. So what else do we have here on the docket? And then look at what we have here in our comments. And guys, thank you. Thanks so much for hanging out here with me tonight. I got to go through and make sure I get everybody covered here. I think we've got a couple of us here. Fume Drummer is hanging out with us. Of course, Tommy from Mafia Sports Report. And I got to give him a plug. First of all, as I said earlier, this is the first major Bills content creator that noticed my channel and identified that and let me know. And I am so appreciative of that, because this really means so much to me to be able to do this. And I'm doing it in a different way. Of course, I've idolized a lot of you guys, and Joe Marino and the way he does stuff, but I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I want to bring a little fire to it. I want to bring a little bit more Homer to it. It doesn't need to be all analytic. It can be a little bit more narrative, and it can be a lot of fun. And that's what I'm after. And certainly, if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do it, and then we'll take a look and see how we do here getting into this week, into this game week, and what we have, and show the dog once in a while. You can hear him, huh? That's interesting, because I've got this my RE20 microphone from Electro Voice, which is not supposed to pick it up, but the dog is obviously excited. I believe I've just heard someone arrive outside. The windows are open here on the upper level here inside the cozy confines of Salt Lick Studio. And for years, every team knew they could run on the Bills. Yes, indeed, indeed. I do think it's going to be different. And if you get any sort of pressure where the Bills are getting ahead on teams and you're making teams throw more because the Bills are stopping the run more, but moreover, a very efficient offense is getting some tutties up on the board before we're really knowing what's going on with the defense on the other side of the ball. That defense is going to be pinning its ears back. And there will be games that get out of hand, because I think these defensive linemen the Bills have, and TJ Sanders also, I've been talking a lot about Deion Walker, who is it's ridiculous how actually close in stature he is to Jordan Phillips, Big Phil. But TJ got double-teamed quite a bit in that Tampa game. And I don't know if that was scheme-wise for Tampa Bay, or if they just felt that Sanders was stronger and they needed to put emphasis on him to try to get their packages run. But Deion Walker just had his way, and this should be interesting. So, oh, all right, you have the dog in the podcast. I can't get them up here because they're a little bit too nuts and won't chill. But I really had to laugh. I was doing, this is my third video I did, which was about the stadium. And in that particular vid, I was using this 20-year-old furnace here, which is a plasma screen display, which has got a beautiful picture. It's a commercial Panasonic plasma screen, but it gets hotter than you can believe, especially after a while. Now, this will be great in the winter, because I'll just have the windows open, let that cold air come in. It is a little bit tonight, too, here. It's kind of rainy, but definitely that night for that podcast on the stadium, I had actually some pictures of the stadium up, and actually brought up some illustrated drawings I created to show the comparative cross sections and so forth. And because you can see the cursor moving around here on the screen, because I'm looking at that on my screen in front of me, so I was able to actually point out things, except they made the cursor, the pointer, much larger. And I never noticed until after the podcast that there's a cat sitting right there, and he's up pawing and trying to catch on to the thing. And nobody ever mentioned it in the comments. And it was funnier than hell because I never saw it before then. Fume drummer, I used to be in Buffalo. I wasn't born there, but I was born in Albany, Georgia. But I only spent about 6 weeks there. And yes, grew up in Buffalo, actually up in northern Niagara County, very, very near Lake Ontario, about 20 miles east of Niagara Falls. And then after getting married, and I've been married for 41 years now? Yeah. After getting married, we moved to South Florida, spent 17 years there. We're the biggest pain in the asses for Doll fans down there. Yes, dog, that's right. We were the biggest pain in the asses for Doll fans down there for years. We would bring down a bunch of people. We had people sleeping in our living room on blankets and stuff. A couple of vans. We would go out with a shoe polish and paint them all up. Go down there and tailgate. They didn't know how to do it. They just show up like, lame, trendy wieners getting there a little before kickoff. We're there. We got the sausage and peppers going on the burner stove. Everybody's eating. Everybody's having a beer and drinking. And then when you got ready to go into the stadium, you had the sausage and peppers all sitting in the pot of oil. You put the cover on it and just slide it under one of the vehicles, and it would stay hot the entire time until we got back out to the parking lot and dug in. And I remember a lot of great games there, Sunday night games, Monday night games. In fact, I remember one game at the stadium formerly known as Joe Robbie, where it was Doug Flutie was the Bills quarterback. So this had to be, I don't even know when, but it was the pregame festivities. The Dolphins were favored to win. Of course, there was the talk about Flutie and so forth. Well, it had to be 99, right? That would have been the year. I think because that was the year around the Music City. I don't want to say the word. It's not a miracle. But so the fireworks are going off to start the game, and I'm like this, my hamstring. We're up in the end zone, upper deck, and I just go like this. I put my hands together, and a spent firework falls right in the palm of my hand. And I look at my buddies and go, the Bills are going to win tonight. And, of course, they did, as they usually did down there. Oh, thanks on the congratulations. You got 10 wonderful years over a total of 41. That's good. In Amherst. I love it, man. I love Western New York and just the feel of it. And, yes, I would be somehow a season ticket holder if I were there. Otherwise, like I said, I have been a holder of the NFL Sunday ticket since it was invented in 1996 or 97, I believe, and have watched just about every single Bills game. I think I may have missed, maybe just a couple over the time for one reason or another, but it's been a great thing. And molds, definitely. See, I'm here. I'm stopping mid-sentence. I got to get better at this live stuff. I'm stopping mid-sentence because you've got these great comments coming in. Now, again, I am in southeast Michigan. I'm about, here's how we do it in Michigan. We hold up the mitten. We got Detroit down here, and we got Flint about up here. Oops, hitting the mic there. And I'm about 2/3 of the way from Detroit to Flint. And, in fact, I can be down to the stadium and down to Ford Field in about no more than 52 minutes, because it's just a couple minutes past where my daughter now resides, down in Midtown Detroit, and she is a acting and theater student at Wayne State University. So we get down there a lot. And in fact, another great story about going to see games, we years ago when there was the, what was it called, Winter Storm Blade, and the Bills were supposed to play on Sunday. They couldn't. The game got moved to Ford Field on a Monday night, and a lot of fans were bussed there, and there was a lottery here in Michigan for tickets, and there was not going to be a price for them, but boy, you had to get lined up online to be able to get them. And my wife managed to get tickets to that game, and we were on about the 20-yard line, and the Bills beat the Rex Ryan coached Jets 38-3. It was a total thumping. And, of course, that got my daughter started on football. But just to finish that story, 2 seasons ago, we, of course, said for once, I love Thanksgiving. I love cooking on Thanksgiving. We'll have to talk about cooking on one show at some point. But we wanted to go see the Bills play the Thanksgiving Day game. And so we got tickets for it and had that plan. But then there was the Cleveland game that got snowed out. It was snow in the area that was preventing fans from getting to the stadium. So the game got moved to Ford Field also. And the Bills were going to then play 2 games inside of 4 days, a Sunday and a Thursday. And the Bills did not stay in Detroit over the time, but we were at both games. And unfortunately, it was that first game, the Thanksgiving game, or no, that was the second one, I guess. Yeah, the Thanksgiving Day game where Von Miller did the ACL. But that was an unfortunate situation, but that's a lot of fun. Bruce Smith sack record. I agree about that also. And if there is any chance of anyone on the Buffalo Bills breaking that, I think it might be this year. Now, I've gone out on a limb with this, but I believe, based on Ryan Nielsen, based on the secondary prowess that is resident in the fact that we have Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich. I think these guys are terrific secondary coaches, and I think they were doing less showing off and more teaching this preseason. But I have predicted and gone on record as predicting that the Buffalo Bills by week 11, that the defense of the Bills will draw comparisons to the 85 Bears. Ooh, I'm dodging the tomatoes. No, I believe that. And we'll see what happens as we get into it. That will be, of course, after Hoyt and Ogunjobi make their way back onto the squad. But the 200 sack record, no, that's not going to happen. And especially since the game has changed so much with a lot more short game and so forth, it's changed to where you're just not going to see those kind of sack numbers. And speaking of records not being broken, McDermott saying that no one will get to 4 Super Bowls in a row again. And the poor Chiefs were actually thinking he was talking about them. And I believe in my heart of hearts that McDermott did not have the Chiefs at all in mind with that. He was just talking about the Bills' achievement. So what else we got here going? My favorite Bills player of all time. Boy, that would be a difficult one. I've loved so many of the players. Regrettably, I've only gotten to actually meet one of them in person. Actually, two. And I'll tell you about the first one. I was a kid. My parents were very good friends with a wonderful family called the Baczynskis. Buzz and Cece Baczynski. Buzz Baczynski was a linebacker on the very first Buffalo Bills squad, the 1960 team. Now, I'm young enough to know that. I'm young enough to remember Van Miller calling games on the Hi-Fi. I remember Bobby Burnett, of course, Jack Kemp, and Buzz Baczynski, who I knew very well. And he used to seem huge to us, big shoulder guy and so forth. He was like 6'2", 250. It's ridiculous how sizes have changed. And the other Bill I met was Bills quarterback Dennis Shaw, who actually appeared at I think it was a Boy Scout function I was at, and I got to meet him and get his autograph. But favorite Bills player of all time, it's got to be Bruce. It's Hammer time. And then OJ, of course. And that was that first season I mentioned when I went to the very first game at Rich Stadium when the Bills hosted the Jets. Another great story is I was playing football as a freshman that season, 1973, a freshman in high school. It was our very last game against the team from Wilson, not the football manufacturer, but the town. And towards the end, and I wasn't a starter, but I was on the kickoff return team, and my job was to knock the shit out of the kicker, which I did with some success. And I got on the field in that very last game, and number 65, I was a defensive tackle. Here comes a play. There's just people everywhere, and all of a sudden the ball is lying on the ground in front of me, and I dove on it. The only big play I ever made playing a football game. I recovered the fumble and, kind of beat up because I played a good bit that night. Got out of the showers and got done. The game was probably, 4 o'clock, something like that, and, over by 5 or 6, and I get out to the parking lot, and my father meets me and says, "Boy, you're probably pretty sore and pretty tired, huh?" I said, Yeah. Probably anxious to get home, right? I said, Yeah. I said, "Well, so I suppose you don't want to go to the Monday night football game." But that was the Bills' very first Monday night contest at the Ralph. That was October 29th, 1973, versus our very favorite Kansas City Chiefs. And the Bills won that game 23-14. Linebacker Dave Washington, number 86, broke his humerus trying to collar a guy, running back from Kansas City. And, of course, on that very evening, which was the 7th game of the 14-game season, O.J. Simpson went past 1,000 yards on his way to 2003. And I think it was in another game that year also. I think they played Cincinnati later in the year. I believe the Bills lost, was it 16-6 or 16-13? But I remember all of these. But, yeah, there's great story. And then Ahmad Rashad's name is a Bills player. His name was Bobby, and I can't think of the last name, but I'm remembering that. Yeah, OJ was awesome. I actually remember making a statue of him in an art class one time out of papier-mâché, but I painted it up pretty nice, and it looked pretty good. It looked like he had some growths on his thigh, but it turned out pretty well. Reed is a fave. Was it? I don't think it was Bobby Chandler. Bobby Chandler was another Bills receiver, I remember. We'll have to actually look that up. Somebody could Google it up. I'm too clumsy here to try to get to the screen here. Actually, I could do it on the phone, but no, I'm not going to interrupt you guys with that. But yeah, those are some great stories about the stadium, and it's fun to actually talk about those because we all have memories there, certainly. So, what else do I have for any final thoughts here? Oh, yes, I was supposed to actually get to the Hawkeye system. And as some of you know, Tommy, especially at the Mafia Sports Report, who identified my channel early on, and I really lucked out with that stadium video. It got tons of views, and just, I suppose, right subject matter, right time, timing and so forth is everything. The most recent video I just did was about Hawkeye. And to me, it was the best video I had done as yet. And it got, of course, the fewest views, but it is about the Hawkeye system, and I think it is a joke. Now, you can find the video on the channel. I've actually got the thumbnail as a graphic showing a football and the green with the yellow line to gain. And, of course, we all know why this happened. The two plays we mentioned earlier with about 13:10 remaining in the fourth quarter of the AFC title game. And Kincaid doesn't get the first down. It's called short, and then Josh is called short on the sneak. And in both cases, it looked as though the ball had crossed the line to gain, but where it was spotted and then, subsequently measured, didn't measure up to the first down. So the NFL freaks out with everyone going crazy about the league is fixed, the referees are being paid off, all of this stuff, which, no, like I said earlier, never attribute to treachery that which can be explained by incompetence. But the NFL was scrambling because this was all over the internet, and there were content creators of quite some note, even outside the NFL space, that were jumping into this and going, what the hell is going on with the NFL? Are you kidding me? Well, the NFL scrambled and came up with their idea, which is the worst Band-Aid in the history of the league, which is this Hawkeye system consisting of 6 each 8K Sony cameras focused down on the ball such that it can be seen where it lies with respect to the line of game, which it is digitally representing within its space of reference. And look at the system works great for tennis because you don't have a bunch of guys laying on the line to gain. The ball is round, so from any aspect and any view, it's going to be round, and you're just looking to see whether it touched the line or not. In football, it's completely different. It's very difficult to have these cameras work. They're certainly not going to work during the play. But the problem with Hawkeye is it's solving a problem that never existed, because the problem is not measuring. Measuring for a first down is not the issue. It was spotting the ball, and that was the issue on the 2 plays we mentioned in the title game. It was spotting the football. Where is the ball actually on the field to play in relation to the line to gain? That was the question. Not measuring. So not only did the NFL solve the wrong problem by trying to solve a measuring problem that wasn't a problem, and not only did they not solve the real problem of actually seeing where the football ends up on the football field after a given play, they didn't solve that. But it doesn't stop there, because what the NFL has done, and no one I've heard has talked about this yet, is the fact that we have removed the use of the chains for measurement. And guys, the chains are theater. It's part of the game. It's theater. Oh, the chain gang's running out. Oh, they're lining it up on the yard stripe so they have the right distances. They're stretching out the chain as they get there. And then you see a ref like Jim McElwee pull out a index card from his wallet and insert it between the football and the stick and saying it's 4th down because it wasn't touching. You know, that's theater. That's part of the game. That's theater. And the chains are just fine for measuring the ball. They can nail this stuff to within the thickness of an index card, as I just indicated. They solved the wrong problem, and they have foisted this horseshit system on us using tennis cameras to see where the ball sits. And then not only that, in the very, very, very first game of the preseason, Bills are playing the Giants. Buffalo completes a play down to the high red zone. Ball's down outside the numbers, maybe 5-6 yards from the boundary. Ball is spotted there by the linesman. And where it's spotted, and he could see where it's spotted, so it wasn't a big pile up. It was just 2 players, ball goes down. So they're going to use the Hawkeye system. And what does he do? He picks up the ball and trots 20 yards with it to the hash mark, maybe setting it plus or minus, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches from where he thinks it actually was, because it wasn't right on any yard marker. You have to, what did he do? Count the blades of grass or turf between where the first white one is and then all the green ones till it got to the ball? Are you effing kidding me? And you run it to the hash mark and then trot out this stupid-ass Hawkeye system that's going to measure with cameras where it is, and we're going to all wait like a bunch of dumbasses looking at the Jumbotron until this silly graphic comes up saying whether the ball is crossed or not. And then they're trying to use it in the preseason when the ball's like 2 feet away. Really, guys? Do you need that much practice with this? I thought this was taking you out of it, but you need practice with it? So it's ridiculous. I didn't see it as much at the end of the preseason, and I haven't heard much about it. I am predicting that we're quietly not going to see it tomorrow night, Friday night, or Sunday. I may be wrong, but I think the ridiculousness of it and the fact that it does not solve the problem that created the outrage that the NFL was fixed. It doesn't solve that problem. The problem was always spotting the ball, not measuring. We had the measuring part down, and exactly as you say, Tommy, that made it more dramatic. It made it a blast. It's like it's utter theater. It's part of the game. And that they didn't see that because they're so worried about covering their asses because it looks like they're cheating because the system for spotting the ball is stupid. You need to be able to see it. Now, if you want to be able to actually spot the ball, it's really simple. I'm going to take this iPhone. I can flip it over, and the image flips around and stays upright, right? That's an accelerometer. That's done with a chip. You come up with two finely crafted or even one finely crafted chip, maybe one at either end, but those chips are like accelerometers, so they know which way they're turned, which way they're oriented with the ball. They digitally know what the shape of the football is based on their location, where every other point on the exterior of the football would be, creating that solid. And then you're digitizing this against the yard markers, where you've got basically a digital span that's basically created of an infinite number of planes going along, not the 1 inch lines, not even the half inch, quarter, infinite number of infinitesimally thin planes along the field, and side to side, from sideline to sideline also. Of course, not as important for spotting the ball vis-a-vis the line to gain, but certainly important. And what you would do is these chips would know where they are in relation to this digital matrix that's set up that knows if the chip is on this particular plane or the next one, down to this infinitesimal movement thing. So now you know where the football is and what orientation it is. Did it cross the goal line with it being points up and points down or normal? Could have been any number of things, but it knows where any part of the football is at any time. That's what the NFL needs to spot the ball correctly. But the first thing people will say is, well, you can't do that, because if you do that, the ball might have gotten to, let's say, the goal line, for example, but was the guy's knee down? Great example with KJ taking that touchdown into the right pylon against the Buccaneers. And certainly his knee was down before the ball crossed the plane. Now, we can usually tell when knees are down, and we can tell from replay at exactly the point. So what do? It's really, really simple. You have to sync the two together. When I'm recording my videos, I have to sync audio with video. It's just something that's done. Well, what you do in this case is you've got the position of the ball on this digital grid based on the chips that are in the ball, knowing what the shape of the ball is and where it actually sits on the field. But you're syncing that in real time along with the video of the gameplay. And that doesn't have to be an 8K camera from some particular angle. It's just your broadcast cameras. We've got high definition. We can see where a guy's knee goes down. And what you do is, the ball maybe crossed the goal line, but let's back up the tape to the point where the knee was down and where was the ball at that point. That's your system. And again, since I could use a job and some more work and so forth, I would be quite pleased to be the consultant to the NFL and run this project and find the expertise with this concept and get this problem solved. But I'd still keep the chains, because the chains are a lot of fun. And Fume Drummer, again, as you say, Madden PlayStation. Isn't that the case? And it's basically, and it's scary when you watch Madden anymore. Jesus, you squint your eyes and it looks like the real thing. It's amazing what's capable. But your point about what is a catch and what is a football move, and I think we just actually might have even seen that in one of the college games this weekend. I think the tight end caught a ball and turned. I don't think it was where Belichick got his ass kicked on national television. I think it was another game, but the tight end definitely had caught the ball, had possession, turned, and then got hit. It wasn't a targeting call, but he got hit pretty hard and lost the ball. So it was called a catch and a fumble, but he fell on his own fumble. I think they're actually getting at least better with that, but this business of the catch thing is unfortunately, and to your point, Fume Drummer, it's unfortunately a lot more difficult than the spotting, because the spotting of the football with the system I've just described it's a complex system, to be sure, but it's really not that difficult. It's straightforward. It's totally empirical. The ball is either here or it's here, and it's a totally empirical system for measuring. But when you have guys of different shapes and sizes and different types of movement skills and the myriad different ways guys can get hit and go to the ground, it does make it very tough. And I'm just wondering, before we had replay and before we had such great cameras, how did we even watch football? I don't know that you didn't have situations like that. Some will say, well, the athletes weren't as good back then, so you don't have these spectacular plays. No, I don't believe that. I think football is violent enough, and there's enough players in the field where you are going to get many, many possibilities of how something could turn out. So to say that it's a situation where, no, it's used to be easier and it's not now, I think that's ridiculous. But what else we got here on the list here? Because I've actually taken up a lot of your guys' time this evening, and it is gone so quickly. And what I'm so excited about when this is over, when I'm done looking at my camera, and I'm trying hard not to read stuff. And I'm like when I do my pods, I'm trying to really look at you guys, talk to you, not have my eyes diverted 5 degrees from the screen all the time like I see elsewhere. But this has been an utter blast. But the other blast part about it is when this is done, and even right now, that seltzer I talked about, which is still got a little bit of condensation on it now. I'm going to drink a toast to you guys, and thank you so much for hanging out for this first live podcast of mine, and even suffering through me sitting here looking like a dipshit when I started the stream. And I didn't know I had it scheduled for 7, but obviously when you hit stream on OBS, that's when it starts. That's all podcast stuff, but learned this time, and my friend and mentor, Tommy from the Mafia Sports Report, will help me through that. And before I forget to mention this again, I have to mention it now. Our good friend Tommy from the Mafia Sports Report will be accompanying and appearing with Dan Mitchell doing post games all season long. That is an awesome gig. I'm so pleased for your channel. I love watching you guys. Just the easy demeanor you have. And I can't wait to appear with somebody else, because I've been yapping here for an hour and 45 minutes, and I know I've gone in 6 different directions and left a sentence cut in half and dangling as if it was on a cliff, and then just moved on to something else. But we're getting there, and it's been an absolute blast. So I think I'm actually going to close it out now with this drink. I would be remiss in saying, because I didn't say it to start because it was messed up, but how I should have started is, welcome to the Ralph Rant. I am your host, the Ralph. Let's go. And here to end it, I want to thank you so much for being here. Thanks for giving me all this time. Thanks for not hitting me upside the head and saying, dude, it's been like basically, 105 minutes. And actually, I'm getting sore sitting in this chair, indeed. But very much enjoyed it and looking forward to many more. And I'm glad I had this opportunity to do this, to get in a little bit of shape for going live, because I've been invited to perhaps have some shows with, for example, the professional that's here watching us from Mafia Sports Report. So it would be good, and I look very, very much forward to getting on camera with some of the greats in this Bills content creation space and learning from them. And guys, I got to tell you, Bills content creators, they're just like every other Bills fan. You know, they're the nicest people on the planet, and I couldn't be more concerned. I mean, more happy to be here and concerned about putting out a good product, because there's so much good advice and so forth. So I'm going to bid you good night. This is the Ralph Rant. There's no closing music, but I'm going to say thanks. Go Bills. Be good. God bless. Please subscribe to the channel. Let's watch. Of course, tomorrow night, Friday night, we're rooting for, obviously, the Chargers to put a dent in this Chiefs crap finally for once. And then Sunday night, go Bills. We'll be talking about it afterwards. Don't worry. They're going to win. It's going to be all right. And with that, I am the Ralph, and I am out. Thanks so much. Now, if I could just find this button here, right? Yeah, Tommy, how do I stop the stream? Oh, man. Oh, you got to find, I got to find OBS here. Oh, this is ridiculous, right? Now, here it is. I'm hiding my face down here. I would have been looking at me the whole night. Guys, thanks so much. Good night. Talk to you.